everybody, Kitthesoulless here, and welcome back to My Fuzzy Life. Now, today's topic is going to piss people off, so I'm going to start this particular episode with a disclaimer. My intention in this video is not to condone reprehensible acts, nor is it to condemn or justify anyone's beliefs or political views. It is not an attack on any individual or group. It is simply my take from a very subjective standpoint of something that happened recently in my life. Now, with that being said, let's talk about some Twitter drama. Now, I want to point out early in the video that I don't exactly like to judge things or people off of the opinions of others. If it's a video game or a food and somebody tells me it's terrible, I'll usually give it a fair taste or a fair play, because I honestly want to judge things for myself. I don't like the idea of having my opinions spoon-fed to me, and I don't like the idea of other people controlling what I do and do not like. And quite honestly, it's much the same with people. I try not to judge people on the opinions of others because, quite honestly, I've found in the past that the opinions of others can be pretty harsh and pretty damning, and a lot of the time, those people do not deserve it. I have also, to some extent, seen firsthand what happens when public opinion turns against you. Now, we'll get back to this a little bit later in the video, but first, I want to talk about something that's happened recently both at a convention and on Twitter. Now, some of you might recall that at Further Confusion 2018, I got called a Nazi. Now, here's how this actually went down. I was offered a sticker that stated, "Nazi furs fuck off." I politely declined because, honestly, I saw it as being tacky and in bad taste. Now, this was honestly where things started to spiral. Now, I'd like to point out that this was a dealer in the dealer's den that offered me this sticker. And shortly after my declining it, she decided to call me a Nazi sympathizer. And when I tried to argue and tell her flat out that I had no association, somebody asked her what was going on, and she yelled across the dealer's den that she was arguing with a Nazi. This sort of thing happens a little too often in this particular community. And to be quite honest, I see that as an insanely shameful thing. It is a shame that people have come into this community and started tearing others down for not believing what they believe or not thinking the way they think. It is a shame that people in our community think it's okay to try to police the thoughts and actions of others through fear. And the worst shame about all of this is that to some degree it works. When you accuse somebody without any proof of a horrible act, it can ruin their life, and I have personally seen this one firsthand. For the better half of a decade in my younger years, I was accused of fucking animals, and that was simply because I was a furry. And in my sophomore year of high school, I held one of my closest friends as she bled to death. She committed suicide because somebody started a rumor that she was a whore, and it actually led to her being attacked and harassed both on campus and at home. There are times when simple words have more power and more weight than any weapon of war. And there are people in our community that live in fear of being accused of something they didn't do, simply because they didn't agree with somebody. And I know this because for a long time, I was one of those people. And I've been part of the furry community for just, I think, a year shy of 2 decades now. And in that time, I've seen this sort of thing happen a lot. Somebody does something genuinely horrible, and then a sort of mass hysteria comes over our community, and suddenly everyone's a criminal, or everyone is a horrible person. It caused me to distance myself from the furry community. It caused me to stop going to meets, and stopped me from even considering going to conventions until I was nearly 30 years old. It wasn't until recently that I grew comfortable enough to actively become part of the community again. And now that I realized what I've missed for so many years because I let my fear control me, those fears actually sort of came true recently. See, recently on Twitter, I was added to a blockchain called the Alt-Furry Blocker, even though I don't consider myself part of Alt-Furry. And why, you might ask? I stated an opinion about someone who goes by the moniker of Dogpatch Press. In particular, I said they were about as credible a news source as Keemstar on YouTube. And for that, I get lumped in with a group that has, for the last year or two at least that I know of, been demonized by a good chunk of the furry community. Now, I will admit, I have talked to people who do consider themselves to be part of Alt-Furry. I've even talked to groups like the Furry Raiders. And in doing so, I've met some individuals that I wouldn't mind associating with. And others I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole because, quite honestly, I don't like them. I've conversed with them, judged them on my own personal level, and just didn't like them. So does talking to this people mean that I share some horrifying ideology that I should be demonized for? Of course not. In fact, my personal belief is that everyone should be considered equal. And by this, I mean everyone should have an equal opportunity. Everybody should have an equal chance. And yes, this particular belief has led to me meeting people that, quite honestly, I would rather lock away in some dark cell and never have to deal with them again. But I haven't. Because I also believe that everyone has the right to speak their minds, to have their own opinions. And this means that sometimes I'll be offended by something someone says or does. And when that happens, I'll disagree with them and leave it at that. Now, me winding up on that blocker or retweeting something that somebody didn't agree with led to a bit of an awkward social encounter very recently in my life. And I'm not going to name names. If you see this, you know who you are. I'm not going to make you a target for anybody who might think that you've done wrong. Now, as per the usual with me, when I first saw this person at the meet, I said hi. And when they didn't look at me, didn't say hi, didn't acknowledge my existence, I figured they might have had a bad day, they may not have heard me, oh well, let it go. And then this person came up to me while I was talking to other people, while I was in a fursuit, in the most public area of the meet, and said, "Because of what you've said and done on the internet, I don't feel comfortable talking to you." Now, if this had been said in a more private setting, I wouldn't have taken issue. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and if somebody doesn't want to associate with me, that's their choice. But the fact that they chose to do this in the most public setting that they could, it seemed more like this individual was interested in getting a reaction, and not from me, but from the people around me. And given how our community has been lately, doing something like that intentionally is not okay. It's just another way of trying to make somebody a target. Anyways, with that said, this is Kitthesoulless signing off. So until next time, everybody, bye-bye.